It's time for the Newsmaker Show on News Talk AM 1480 WLEA.
Weighing in as only he can, the professor of political science to speak in politically scientific ways, Dr. Robert Heineman.
I'll give it my best. Thank you, Brian.
Dr. Heineman, before we get to Mitt Romney, Donald Trump, and all of those issues, kind of an interesting thing. Your former student, the now Congressman Tom Reed, was at a Ways and Means Committee hearing on Thursday morning, and a Georgetown student was testifying about being forbidden to campaign for Bernie Sanders at Georgetown. Reed came out and sided with the student, telling the Georgetown student, I'm a Republican, I'm on the other side of the aisle, but you had a total right to hold that position. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I agree with Congressman Reed. As usual, fine man. Took some fine courses in politics. But when you're on private campuses, the schools have quite a bit of leeway in what they can allow and what they cannot allow. Although I find it really strange that a school with the standards and status that Georgetown has would do something like that. I just kind of wonder about the kids' testimony there. Frankly, I would find it hard to believe that Georgetown would do that. Now, some of these smaller schools, often religious schools of one sort or another, yeah, you can certainly find some pretty oppressive suppression of speech. And again, they pretty much have a right to do what they want. If it's a state school, on the other hand, now you have a real free speech issue.
Moving on to the presidential race, Dr. Heineman. Mitt Romney trashed Trump and listed all of Trump's failures in a speech given Thursday morning. And then afterwards, Donald Trump called Romney a failed candidate. Your thoughts on what Romney and Trump are saying?
Well, I think we have to put this in some real perspective here. If you don't mind, Brian, we could broaden the perspective a bit here, the context a bit. And I think we have to go back to Tuesday and the so-called Super Tuesday.
We can rewind to Tuesday. That's fine.
Good. Thanks, Brian. It makes it a lot easier for me here to what happened on Super Tuesday, I think, was pretty much totally misrepresented by the press. It's really amazing how off bubble these people can be in terms of winning this state, losing that state. I mean, the point is, what you're trying to do is put together delegates. And after Super Tuesday, I think the Trump people and the Clinton people were not particularly happy. The idea that somehow Hillary Clinton smashed Bernie Sanders in southern states that the Republicans haven't carried for, or the Democrats haven't carried for the last 6 or 8 elections. I don't know, what does that prove? Now, it's true she picks up some delegates, but what is, I think, embarrassing for her is that Bernie Sanders obviously won Vermont, he won Minnesota, and he took another, Colorado, and not only did he win them, he won them by, double-digit margins. In addition to which, of course, he virtually tied her in, I think it was 1.4% in Massachusetts. So in states where the Democrats usually often win and need to win, Bernie Sanders ran very strongly against Hillary. And in terms of delegates, I think in many of these states, he picked up delegates. But on the Republican side, I think, again, the Trump people, they just can't put Ted Cruz away. He just keeps popping up. And so in Texas, which Cruz won, and Oklahoma and Alaska, fine. Again, in Texas, I think they basically pretty much split. Although Cruz beat him pretty solidly in Texas, actually. But it would have been personal embarrassment, of course, for Cruz to have lost Texas, his home state. But in terms of these other states, places like Virginia and places like that, where Rubio ran very strongly, the delegate count essentially ended up being split. So that in terms of where the Republicans are, the Trump people simply were not able to put Rubio and Cruz away on Tuesday, and that makes it tougher for Trump to gain the 1,200 and some whatever delegates he needs. Right now, I think he has something like 285 delegates, but Cruz has 160 some, and Rubio is up close to 100. So if Rubio carries Florida and North Carolina, which have winner-take-all primaries, he's going to be right up there in the mix again. Now, that takes us back to your discussion of Romney and his attacks on Trump. I think the timing here is kind of interesting. I think Romney and the Republican leadership basically see that Trump is somewhat vulnerable on a number of points, and that showed up, I think, Tuesday. And I think Romney has landed in there, encouraging people to keep things close in these races and perhaps help Rubio carry Florida. I think this Trump University thing is increasingly going to be a problem for the Donald. It does look like it was a total fraud and mismanaged, and a lot of people lost their money. It's so if Trump wants to call Romney a failed candidate, let's point out that Romney did win, I think, election without much trouble in a heavily Democrat state, Massachusetts. I think Trump has yet to win anything like that. So, but the point is, Romney made a very good spokesperson on this. He's got nothing to lose. He started out by saying, I'm not going to be a candidate, and I'm not endorsing any candidate, but let me tell you this guy Trump is a total fraud. Now, it'd be kind of hard to get George W. Bush to do that because Trump obviously has been blasting him anyway, and obviously his brother was one of the candidates. Romney has really nothing to lose in there. He's just presenting himself, and I think genuinely so, as someone who's trying to get the party back on what he sees as the right track. So I think that will hurt Trump. Whether it's enough to derail him, I'm not sure. But I think people have been looking around for somewhere where they can find another candidate. Obviously, my candidate, Kasich, I'm still hanging on for him. But I see, again, Dr. Carson has basically withdrawn, so that's going to throw, and I don't know where those votes are going to go. But it's narrowing now. We're looking basically at 4 candidates.
10 years ago, Dr. Heineman, the argument in the Republican Party, and this was because of the presence of Ron Paul. The argument 10 years ago was the libertarian Republicans versus the conservative Republicans. Now the argument has switched. With the presence of Donald Trump, it's the establishment versus the anti-establishment. I can't necessarily call Trump a conservative because he's not completely conservative. He could almost better be described as anti-establishment.
Yeah, so absolutely. I think that is the label that he would like to have. Again, whether he's conservative, whether he's liberal, I think Romney's point was well taken. That is, nobody has any idea where this guy is going to come down in a position of policymaking. And of course, that's one of the problems with electing somebody who's never been in politics or in government before. You have no idea where they're going to stand on these important issues. I mean, they can say what they want, although I will say this for Trump. He pretty much says kind of what he feels. It doesn't appear he's pandering to any particular element there. But no, the anti-establishment thing, I think, ties into basically what the Tea Party tied into 4 or 6 years ago pretty heavily, and I think is rejuvenating that whole element. There are a lot of people very, very unhappy out there, and some of them have very good reason to be unhappy, and Trump is playing very heavily into that group. Plus, I think the Trump people feel that if it's Trump versus Hillary, that Trump will pick up, I've heard, 20% or more of the Democrat vote. And because there are a lot of working-class Democrats that are really pretty unhappy as well. So I think the anti-establishment versus the establishment approach is playing. Now, tying into that, you could throw in Ted Cruz, because as we know, he's pretty genuinely and generally hated by his colleagues and by the people inside the Beltway. And people have played that up a number of times. But I don't see how that hurts Ted Cruz if we're talking about anti-establishment versus establishment. I mean, clearly they're labeling an anti-establishment candidate as well.
Rush Limbaugh said that the Republican establishment, when they think of conservatism, think back of Barry Goldwater getting beaten in the 1960s. Limbaugh also says the establishment never thinks of Reagan winning twice in the 1980s. Limbaugh says that the establishment, for them, conservatism is a way of thinking that loses elections. Your take on Limbaugh's analysis?
The idea that conservatives feel that they've been sold out does play out there, and I think we have one or two other commentators spend all their time moaning that somehow a lot of these conservative positions, which frankly are at the edge, aren't somehow being enacted or pushed. The first key prerequisite of an elected official is, of course, to get reelected. And to go out there and spout some of this stuff is simply to shoot yourself in the foot. But that doesn't mean that as a conservative you can't push particular ideas and make some progress here and there. And what I think Limbaugh doesn't understand about Reagan is that Reagan had basically four principal goals, and his talk about social conservatism, for example, was just talk. He appointed conservative justices to the Supreme Court and pretty conservative people in a lot of government positions, but in terms of taking any actual moves on things like flag burning, flag saluting too, I guess, prayer in the public schools, abortion, things, he never did anything. His basic goals were to control spending, increase the military, and what were the other two or three? I feel like Rick Perry here. He had four. Lower taxes, and there's another one in there we could throw in there. The result of these goals, which he did pretty much accomplish, was, of course, that he tripled the national debt while he was in office. But that didn't bother Reagan much, and frankly, didn't bother the public much either. I think what Reagan was very good at doing is conveying a sense of optimism and promise and harmony, and speaking toward these other social issues in a reasonably encouraging and what we might call acceptable fashion. So in that sense, I think he obviously was very successful. Trump, on the other hand, if that's what Romney's trying to push here, and I guess some other talk show hosts and things try to do that as well. Trump, of course, being a former TV star, and star might be too strong a word, whereas Reagan was a movie actor, etc. The point is, Trump's whole approach, and this is where Hillary Clinton is really playing in now, obviously, Trump's whole approach is divisive, and it's aggressive, and it's nasty. Nobody would ever call Ronald Reagan nasty. They made fun of him that somehow he wasn't particularly smart. Are you kidding me? the guy was somebody pulled all these things off, and the idea that Reagan gave the impression that he wasn't particularly smart, I think, was just part of his persona. Now, you don't have to worry about Trump, because Trump will say that he's clearly the smartest person on the stage, perhaps in the building. I don't know. He'll just tell you that. Well, that's great. But Hillary is taking advantage of this, I think, and her whole approach now is we have to unite the country. We don't need to be building walls. We have to be building bridges and all that sort of thing. And I think in that sense she sort of plays into the sense that Reagan understood the way Americans look at themselves. I think it's has all the potential to be a pretty ugly situation, unfortunately, and there's certainly no Ronald Reagan willing to step forward, although I will say Casey just trying to be more mellow and united, but he doesn't have anywhere near the thespian skills that Ronald Reagan had.
Talking with Dr. Robert Heineman here on a Friday on the Newsmaker Show. Back in just a moment. On the Newsmaker Show, Brian O'Neill on with Dr. Robert Heineman. In case you did not notice, Thursdays with Dr. Christian Koff are very pro-Trump. On Fridays, it's a little bit less so.
I would say considerably less so, yes. Yes.
Dr. Heineman, ugly incident happened at a Trump rally. A reporter, make that a photographer from Time magazine, and I don't know if you saw this on TV or online.
No, I don't watch much of this stuff.
Photographer,
I just get my news off the Newsmaker program, basically.
A photographer on was at a Trump rally in Virginia, and the photographer stepped over a line in order to get a better picture. You know, there was some colored tape on the ground. The photographer, his name was Morris from Time magazine, stepped over the line just to quickly get a picture. Reporters who saw it say that the Secret Service told the guy to get back behind the line. The photographer used the F word with the Secret Service agent.
Oh, how nasty. Yeah,
now, the video of the incident starts with the photographer being down on his pants, on the cement, on his butt. And he's sitting back with his hands up, with his hands down on the cement, and he's kicking up at the Secret Service agent's legs. He's kicking him pretty. It looked like he had, pretty hard shoes on, so that would have hurt. Then the photographer got up and said, "Hey, you grabbed me by the throat." And stupidly, the photographer grabbed the Secret Service agent's throat in demonstration. That got him a trip to the local police station.
Right.
Wondering, Dr. Heineman, the press has been complaining about the way they've been treated at these Trump events by the security people. Wondering if you want to weigh in there.
Well, I don't know. I saw parts of that, and I thought it was, frankly, a private security person that dealt with the reporter, but you're saying it was
Secret Service
protection. Yeah. Well, those guys are pretty well trained, I'll guarantee you that. And I'm sure they're plenty tense with a guy like Trump out there who I'm sure attracts all kinds of people, both critical and supportive. And you got to keep your eyes on these people. So the reporter told to get back. I think, that's what he has to do. Now, compare that or contrast that with the Clinton campaign. And, of course, she simply doesn't allow people in.
I've seen videos where she has the reporters physically roped off, and it's a moving rope with people walking, taking it along so they can't get close.
She won't. I think that's a problem she's going to have if she gets a nomination. She's going to have to come out in public. A lot of her speeches are to private groups or groups very carefully selected, so the whole thing is pretty much rehearsed, and so you're not going to get too much of this in that respect. And Trump's, I think, are they're more people and much wider open. So it does make it a lot tougher on the Secret Service. But when you start, when I was a local judge many, many years ago, there were two things that would put a guy in jail right off the bat, stealing a stop sign, and if you touched or punched a cop in any way or shape or form, you were gone. And I think that's the rule of law here. Whether you and I know cops and everybody else get a little out of hand sometimes, but you got to respect that.
Sean Hannity had a very good piece of advice on that situation. He said, and he was talking about police-involved deaths, and what Sean Hannity said was, it doesn't, wait, if someone in law enforcement's giving you a hard time, just take it, wait, don't escalate the situation, don't aggravate the officer with the gun. And clearly the Time magazine guy was doing that. He was F-wording him.
You're dealing with another liberal, I assume liberal type, who's in there to try to put Trump in the worst light, which he has every right to do. Don't get me wrong there. But there have to be certain, I guess we could say when Trump draws a line in the ground, you better respect it.
I did have a question for you about Trump's health care plan, which was released. Trump's always being slammed.
I can't do much for you there. I don't know much about it. All I've heard is Trump saying we're going to redo Obamacare. And,
he said he wanted to repeal it, and he had several rules, including allowing insurance to be sold state to state across state lines.
I know. That's
And repealing Obamacare, like I said, and also allowing taxpayers to fully deduct health insurance premium payments in tax returns. Do you think that Trump is looking at Obamacare, seeing things that were not addressed by Obamacare?
Well, the selling insurance across state lines, that's something that, of course, the various interests involved have been fighting all along. And that would certainly open up, I think, talk about insurance premiums and coverage. I think that would be making a much more competitive situation. That's for sure. No, I'm sure Trump has some pretty good ideas there. That's the problem with the guy. He's such a jerk, personally, in his appearances. But I don't know if he's the brightest guy in the room, but he's certainly smart. And I think he probably has some pretty good ideas. It's just a shame, that he doesn't do a better job of packaging them. But you look at Jeb Bush, and I'm sure he had a lot of good ideas too, but he just couldn't get any traction at all. So maybe we're in an era where entertainment and nastiness is sort of the game of the day. It's unfortunate, Brian. I'll go ahead. I'm sorry.
You've been listening to the Newsmaker show on AM 1480 WLEA. Tune in next week when Dr. Robert Heineman divulges the Republican secret plan to undo Donald Trump at the convention.
Yes, we're moving in that direction, Brian. Yes.
Will you tell us?
I'm keeping it under wraps till then.
Oh, boy.